On May 13, 1944, Pacific Fleet Radio Unit, Pearl Harbor. The codebreaker's pencil scratched across paper as intercepted Imperial Japanese characters transformed into English letters. Transmission from undersea vessel I-16. Scheduled rice delivery to Buin, southern Bougainville. Departure imminent. Lieutenant Commanding Officer Robert Williamson set down his coffee and reached for the secure telephone. 3 destroyer escorts would intercept: the USS England, the USS George, the USS Rabbi. What none of them knew was that this single decoded transmission would trigger the most devastating anti-submarine hunt in naval history. The Pacific conflict had taught United States forces that Imperial Japanese submarines were not just weapons of conflict, they were lifelines. Cut those lifelines, and entire garrisons would starve. The Imperial Japanese Navy's 7th Undersea Vessel Squadron had established a patrol line stretching from Truk Island to the Admiralty Islands. 7 submarines: I-116, RO-104, RO-105, RO-106, RO-108, RO-116, and RO-117. Admiral Toyota's underwater Centuries, positioned to detect any United States fleet movement toward the Palau Islands or the Marianas. The USS England cut through Pacific swells at 23 knots. Her Buckley-class hull displacing 1,400 tons of seawater. Lieutenant Commanding Officer Walton Pendleton stood on the bridge,
studying the tactical plot. His vessel carried 186 men and an arsenal specifically designed to kill submarines. 2 depth charge racks, 8 K-guns capable of hurling 300-pound charges 150 yards, and mounted forward of the bridge the weapon that would make naval history, a 24-barrel Hedgehog anti-submarine mortar. The Hedgehog represented British engineering at its deadliest. Unlike depth charges that exploded at preset depths, Hedgehog projectiles detonated only on contact with solid objects. Each of the 24 spigots fired a 65-pound projectile containing 35 pounds of Torpex explosive. The mathematics were brutal. Traditional depth charges achieved kills in 1 assault out of 80 attempts. The Hedgehog succeeded in 1 assault out of 5. Executive Officer John Williamson had studied those statistics until they were burned into his memory. Cambridge educated with a mind for trigonometry and physics, Williamson understood that undersea vessel warfare was ultimately about geometry. Sound waves traveling through water at 4,800 feet per second. Target depth calculations, assault angles. The difference between a hit and a miss often came down to fractions of degrees and split-second timing. Aboard the Imperial Japanese undersea vessel I-16, Lieutenant Commanding Officer Taiuchi Yoshitaka reviewed his cargo manifest. 75-pound rubber bags filled with rice. 9
Previous conflict patrols had taught him that supply runs were among the most dangerous missions in the Imperial Navy. Surface ships attracted aircraft. Submarines attracted destroyer escorts equipped with increasingly sophisticated detection equipment. I-16 displaced 2,180 tons submerged, powered by diesel engines on the surface and electric motors underwater. Her sailors of 94 men had survived attacks from United States destroyers, aircraft depth charges, and close encounters with Allied submarines. But the undersea vessel's greatest vulnerability remained the same weakness that plagued all diesel-electric boats: the need to surface for battery charging and air replenishment. The United States ships formed a line, a breast search formation, as they approached the intercept area. USS George to port, USS Rabbi to starboard, USS England in the center. Each destroyer escort swept the ocean with SG surface search radar and QC sonar equipment. The sonar operators worked in 15-minute shifts, their ears tuned to distinguish between whale songs, thermal layers, schools of fish, and the distinctive metallic echo of an undersea vessel hull. Sonarman First Class David Chun had been tracking contacts for 18 months across the Pacific. His hands moved automatically across the sonar controls as he rotated the transducer head through its search pattern. Stop every few
degrees, transmit a ping, listen for the echo return. The water was calm, conditions ideal for sound propagation. Temperature layers minimal, no thermal barriers to scatter the acoustic beam. At 13:35 on May 19th, Chen's earphones crackled with the unmistakable signature of an undersea vessel echo, range 2,000 yards, bearing 090 degrees relative. He pressed the alarm button and reached for the sound-powered telephone. Bridge sonar positive undersea vessel contact bearing 090, range 2,000. In on I-16's bridge, the hydrophone operator reported the distinctive ping of United States sonar. Lieutenant Commanding Officer Yoshitaka ordered an immediate dive. Emergency ballast tank vents opened with explosive bursts of compressed air. The undersea vessel's bow angled downward as tons of seawater flooded the ballast tanks. Dive time to periscope depth, 45 seconds. Time to 100 feet, 2 minutes and 15 seconds. Executive Officer Williamson plotted the assault geometry on the bridge chart table. Target speed estimated at 8 knots. Course roughly southwest toward Bougainville. Depth unknown, but probably between 100 and 200 feet during evasive maneuvers. The Hedgehog's effective range was 270 yards, but accuracy depended on precise depth calculations and target prediction. The England's first assault came at 13:41. 24 Hedgehog projectiles arced through the air in a carefully
Calculated pattern designed to blanket the target area with a 40-yard spread. The projectiles struck the water and sank at a rate of 8 feet per second. No explosions. Clean miss. Williamson adjusted his calculations. The undersea vessel had probably gone deeper than expected, using the thermal layer at 150 feet to mask its acoustic signature. He ordered a course correction and prepared for the second assault. This time, 3 projectiles would be set for deeper penetration. At 13:58, the second Hedgehog salvo scored 1 hit. A muffled explosion echoed through the water, felt as much as heard through the England's hull. The undersea vessel was damaged, but not destroyed. Williamson could hear the grinding of damaged machinery through the sonar equipment, but I-16 remained maneuverable. The third assault came at 14:10. Williamson had calculated the target depth at 200 feet, but the fathometer reading after the assault revealed the undersea vessel was actually at 325 feet. The Hedgehog projectiles had passed harmlessly overhead. I-16's commanding officer was proving more skilled than anticipated, using every tactical advantage available. The fourth assault failed when the undersea vessel executed a radical course change at the last moment. Hydrophone operators aboard I-16 had learned to time United States assault patterns, counting the seconds between sonar pings to predict when weapons would be fired. Emergency rudder hard to port, blow negative ballast, change depth by 50 feet. Standard evasion tactics that had kept Imperial Japanese submarines alive throughout the Pacific conflict. At 14:33, Williamson made his final calculation. Target bearing 170 degrees, range 400 yards, depth 250 feet. Based on sonar propagation delay, the England's fifth Hedgehog assault put 4 to 6 projectiles into I-16's pressure hull. The explosion lifted the England's fantail clear of the water. Men were knocked off their feet as the shock wave traveled through both vessels. In I-16's forward torpedo room, seawater erupted through ruptured hull plates. Emergency lighting failed. The undersea vessel's bow angled toward the ocean floor 3 miles below. 20 minutes later, debris began floating to the surface. Life preservers marked with Imperial Japanese characters, wooden planking, oil slicks spreading across the calm Pacific. I-6 and her sailors of 94 men,
had joined the growing list of Imperial Japanese submarines that would never return to port. But Pacific Fleet Radio Unit had decoded more than one transmission. On May 20th, cryptographers broke a second Imperial Japanese transmission, revealing the location of the 7th Undersea Vessel Squadron's patrol line. 7 submarines positioned across a route that Admiral William Halsey had used twice before to move the Third Fleet. RO-104, RO-105, RO-106, RO-108, RO-109, RO-112, and RO-116. Admiral Toyoto's strategy was tactically sound. Position submarines at choke points where United States carrier task forces would be most vulnerable. Force the enemy to either accept undersea vessel attacks or divert around the patrol line, adding days to transit times. The plan assumed that United States anti-submarine forces would detect individual submarines but be unable to locate and destroy an entire squadron before the patrol line could be repositioned. Commanding Officer Hamilton Haynes, commanding Escort Division 39, received orders to sweep the Imperial Japanese patrol line from west to east. 3 destroyer escorts against 7 enemy submarines. The mathematics seemed to favor the Imperial Japanese, but mathematics did not account for United States' technological advantages and the remarkable accuracy of the USS England's Hedgehog system. USS George detected RO-106 at 0350 on May 22nd, radar contact on a surface undersea vessel 8 miles distant. The Imperial Japanese boat had been running on the surface to charge batteries, a necessary but dangerous practice that left submarines vulnerable to detection. Searchlight illumination confirmed the target as the George's 5-inch guns swung toward the contact. RO-106 crash-dived in 38 seconds, but the damage was done. The Americans knew the undersea vessel's approximate position and course. USS George attacked with Hedgehogs at 0415, but missed when the undersea vessel executed evasive maneuvers at a depth of 200 feet. Hydrophone operators aboard the Imperial Japanese boat had detected the incoming projectiles and initiated emergency procedures. USS England regained sonar contact at 0425. Williamson had refined his assault methodology based on the I-16 engagement. Calculate target depth based on sonar propagation time, factor in undersea vessel evasion speed and turning radius. Predict the most likely position 60 seconds after initial contact. His first Hedgehog assault missed, but the second assault at 0501 scored at least 3 direct hits. The underwater explosion was visible from the surface as a massive column of water and debris erupted from the ocean. RO-106 pressure hull had been breached in multiple locations. Emergency ballast tank systems failed. The undersea vessel sank by the stern, with all 59 sailors' members lost. 2 submarines destroyed in 4 days. The pattern was becoming clear to Imperial Japanese naval intelligence monitoring radio traffic in the area. United States anti-submarine forces were systematically hunting the 7th Undersea Vessel Squadron using previously unknown tactics and weapons. Emergency messages went out to the remaining
submarines, ordering them to maintain radio silence and avoid surface operations except in extreme emergencies. But the Americans had momentum and technological advantages that the Imperial Japanese could not match. Radar systems capable of detecting submarines at ranges exceeding 10 miles, sonar equipment with sufficient resolution to track targets through thermal layers and ocean currents, and the Hedgehog weapons system that eliminated the traditional weaknesses of depth charge attacks. Traditional depth charges required attacking ships to pass directly over the target undersea vessel before dropping charges over the stern. This created a critical vulnerability period where sonar contact was lost and the undersea vessel could execute evasive maneuvers. Worse, depth charge explosions created turbulence and acoustic interference that prevented sonar operators from regaining contact for up to 15 minutes after each assault. The Hedgehog solved both problems. Projectiles were fired ahead of the attacking vessel while maintaining continuous sonar contact. Missed attacks created no acoustic interference, allowing immediate follow-up engagements. The contact fusing system meant that only direct hits would explode, eliminating false damage assessments and acoustic masking. RO-104 was the third undersea vessel to encounter the United States hunter-killer groups.
Killer Group. At 060 on May 23, USS Raw detected the undersea vessel on radar while running on the surface approximately 250 nautical miles north-northwest of seething New Ireland. The undersea vessel's radar detection equipment functioned correctly, and RO-104 submerged within 45 seconds of initial contact. But 45 seconds was sufficient time for United States fire control systems to establish an accurate firing solution. Target course, speed, and dive point were now known with mathematical precision. USS Robbie conducted 4 Hedgehog attacks between 0617 and 0715, all misses as the undersea vessel's commanding officer employed increasingly desperate evasion tactics. The Imperial Japanese undersea vessel attempted to jam the United States sonar with bursts of tuned sound impulses, a countermeasure that achieved limited success by masking the undersea vessel's acoustic signature. Emergency course changes at random intervals, depth variations between 50 and 300 feet, compressed air releases to create false acoustic targets, every trick learned through 3 years of Pacific combat. USS George joined the assault at 0717 with 5 consecutive Hedgehog attacks, all unsuccessful.
Position. Emergency rudder movements, silent running with minimal propeller noise, ballast tank manipulations to change depth without detectable acoustic signatures. At 0819, Executive Officer Williamson began his final assault calculation. RO-104 had been evading for over 2 hours, burning battery power and compressed air reserves at unsustainable rates. The undersea vessel would be forced to reduce evasion efforts to conserve power for essential systems. Williamson plotted the target's most likely position based on energy conservation requirements and ordered the England's assault. 24 Hedgehog projectiles bracketed the target area at 0834, 10 to 12 direct hits on RO-104's pressure hull. The undersea vessel's emergency ballast tank system activated automatically as seawater flooded the engine room and forward battery compartments. A huge underwater explosion followed 3 minutes later as the undersea vessel's remaining compressed air cylinders ruptured. Debris and oil reached the surface at 10:45. All 58 sailors' members were lost. 3 submarines destroyed in 5 days. The mathematical probability of such success using traditional anti-submarine weapons would have been virtually impossible. Depth charges achieved kill rates of approximately 3% in early 1942, rising to 30% by war's end as tactics and technology improved. The Hedgehog's 20% success rate represented a 6-fold improvement in lethality, but statistics only told part of the story. The psychological impact on remaining Imperial Japanese undersea vessel crews was equally devastating. Radio intercepts indicated that undersea vessel commanders were requesting permission to abandon patrol stations and withdraw to safer areas. Morale reports from captured documents revealed growing fear among undersea vessel crews about United States superweapons capable of achieving impossible accuracy. RO-116 was running a routine patrol pattern when USS George detected the undersea vessel at 0120 on May 24th. Radar contact at 8 miles. Surface target proceeding at 12 knots toward the patrol line's eastern terminus. The undersea vessel's commanding officer had apparently decided that speed was more important than stealth, a calculated risk that proved fatal. USS England gained sonar contact at 0150 as the undersea vessel executed an emergency dive. Crash dive procedures completed in 35 seconds, but United States assault calculations were already in progress. Williamson had refined his methodology to account for Imperial Japanese evasion patterns observed in previous engagements. The first Hedgehog assault at 0214 scored 3 to 5 direct hits on RO-116 hull. Unlike previous engagements, the undersea vessel's destruction was not accompanied by a
massive secondary explosion. Damage control systems had been improved on newer Imperial Japanese submarines, but internal flooding could not be controlled with multiple hull breaches below the waterline. Breaking up noises echoed through the water as internal bulkheads collapsed under pressure. Emergency ballast tank venting as the sailors attempted to restore buoyancy. Propeller shaft bearing failure as seawater flooded the engine room. The sounds of undersea vessel dying could be heard through sonar equipment for 20 minutes before RO-116 disappeared into the deep ocean with all 56 sailor members.
Stations and concentrate the remaining submarines in a defensive formation that could provide mutual support against United States attacks. On May 26th, a hunter-killer group consisting of the escort carrier USS Hawkett Bay and 4 Fletcher-class destroyers arrived to relieve the England, George, and Raw. The 3 destroyer escorts have been conducting continuous operations for 8 days, expending ammunition and fuel at rates that required immediate replenishment. Standard procedure would have been to return to port for resupply and sailors' rest, but Commanding Officer Haynes requested permission to conduct one final sweep of the patrol area while proceeding to the port of Majuras for replenishment. Intelligence intercepts suggested that RO-108 was operating in the immediate vicinity, possibly attempting to rendezvous with the remaining submarines for coordinated withdrawal to safer waters. USS England detected RO-108 at 2304 on May 26th. Sonar contact at 1,500 yards. Target proceeding at 8 knots on a southeasterly course. The undersea vessel was running submerged but at shallow depth, probably attempting to maximize speed while maintaining minimal battery consumption for extended operations. Williamson's assault calculation was completed within 3 minutes of initial contact. Target depth estimated at 120 feet based on sonar propagation characteristics, course unchanged since initial detection, suggesting the undersea vessel's commanding officer was either unaware of United States presence or attempting to outrun pursuit rather than engage in evasive maneuvers. The England's Hedgehog assault at 2323 put multiple projectiles into RO-108's hull. The undersea vessel's destruction was swift and complete, marked by a massive underwater explosion that illuminated the ocean's surface with phosphorescent bubbles and debris. Emergency lighting from the undersea vessel's battery compartments continued glowing underwater for several minutes before electrical systems failed completely. 5 submarines destroyed in 8 days. The USS England had achieved the most successful anti-submarine patrol in naval history, but one target remained. RO-105, commanded by Lieutenant Junichi Inoue, with Captain Ryan Suko, commanding officer of Undersea Vessel Division 51, embarked as a passenger. RO-105 had been built at the Sasebo Naval Arsenal and commissioned in November 1943. Her sailors had survived multiple encounters with United States submarines and aircraft during previous patrols. On August 12, 1943, the undersea vessel had narrowly avoided 2 torpedoes fired by USS Tarpon through radical evasive action. In September 1943, RO-105 had fired torpedoes at the light cruiser USS Columbia but missed due to target maneuvering. The undersea vessel had also conducted several successful rescue missions, recovering downed Imperial Japanese aviators from contested waters around the Solomon Islands and New Guinea. Her crew's experience and their commanding officer's tactical skill made RO-105 the most dangerous target remaining in a 7th Undersea Vessel Squadron. Imperial Japanese 6th Fleet Intelligence had intercepted and decoded United States radio transmissions, revealing the approximate location of the USS England and her consorts. Emergency orders directed RO-105 to avoid contact with United States forces and withdraw to truck for rearming and sailors' replacement. But fuel limitations and battery capacity made immediate withdrawal impossible without surface running through areas known to be patrolled by United States aircraft. The final engagement began on May 29 when USS George detected RO-105 running on the surface at 21:30. The undersea vessel crash-dived immediately, but her position and course were now known to United States fire control systems. What followed was a 25-hour battle of attrition that tested both crews to their limits. USS George conducted multiple Hedgehog attacks throughout the night, missing due to the undersea vessel's increasingly erratic evasion patterns. Emergent
Course changes every 3 minutes. Depth variations between 60 and 300 feet. Silent running at minimum propeller speed to reduce acoustic signature. Counter-detection measures, including bursts of compressed air to create false sonar targets. By dawn on May 30th, both USS George and USS Raby had expended most of their Hedgehog ammunition without achieving a kill. RO-105's commanding officer had demonstrated exceptional skill in undersea vessel warfare, using every available tactic to avoid destruction. Emergency ballast tank manipulation to change trim angle. Propeller cavitation reduction through precise speed control. Acoustic decoy deployment at critical moments. Commanding Officer Haynes had initially ordered the USS England to remain in reserve while George and Raby conducted the primary assault. Standard tactical doctrine called for the most successful unit to be preserved for future operations rather than risked in prolonged engagements. But after 24 hours of unsuccessful attacks, Haynes made the decision that would complete the England's historic achievement. "Oh hell, go ahead, England." The radio transmission at 07:36 on May 30th authorized the England's final assault. Executive Officer Williamson had been tracking the engagement and calculating optimal assault parameters based on the undersea vessel's
observed evasion patterns. Target depth approximately 200 feet, course varying but generally southwest toward Bougainville. Speed reduced to conserve battery power. The England's Hedgehog assault at 07:36 scored 6 to 10 direct hits on RO-105's pressure hull. A major explosion followed at 07:41 as the undersea vessel's compressed air systems ruptured and seawater flooded all compartments simultaneously. Oil and debris fountained to the surface, marking the final destruction of the 7th Undersea Vessel Squadron. Captain Ryan Succo, one of the Imperial Navy's most experienced undersea vessel commanders, was among the 55 men lost when RO-105 sank. His death represented not just the loss of individual expertise, but the destruction of institutional knowledge accumulated through years of Pacific combat operations. 6 submarines destroyed in 12 days. The USS England's achievement was unprecedented in the history of anti-submarine warfare and would never be equaled. Admiral Ernest King's promise that there will always be an England in the United States Navy was fulfilled in 1960 when the guided missile destroyer USS England was commissioned, carrying forward the name and legacy. But the tactical implications extended far beyond individual achievement. The destruction of the 7th Undersea Vessel Squadron represented a fundamental shift.
The Pacific conflict's balance of power. Admiral Toyoda's Operation Ago, the planned decisive battle against United States carrier forces, had been compromised before it began. Without undersea vessel reconnaissance, Imperial Japanese naval intelligence was operating blind. The technological lessons were equally significant. United States industry had produced 622,128 depth charges between December 1941 and September 1945, representing a massive investment in traditional anti-submarine weapons. The Hedgehog's superior performance suggested that future naval construction should prioritize accuracy over quantity. British figures from World Conflict II showed that one undersea vessel would be sunk for every 60 standard depth charge attacks. The Hedgehog achieved a ratio of one undersea vessel sunk for every 6 attacks, a 10-fold improvement in effectiveness.
When combined with improved sonar equipment and radar detection capabilities, the Hedgehog represented a revolutionary advance in anti-submarine warfare. The psychological impact on Imperial Japanese undersea vessel operations was equally devastating. Undersea vessel crews who had previously operated with confidence in their ability to evade United States attacks now faced weapon systems that seemed to achieve impossible accuracy. Morale reports from intercepted naval communications revealed that ships under anti-submarine attack would frequently slow down or even halt all silent running mechanisms in order to determine firing solutions for conventional depth charges.
Documents revealed growing reluctance among undersea vessel commanders to engage United States surface forces. Admiral Toyoda's reaction to the loss of the 7th Undersea Vessel Squadron was swift and decisive. Operation Ago was modified to eliminate dependence on undersea vessel reconnaissance. Surface vessels and aircraft would provide intelligence on United States fleet movements, but this required resources that were increasingly scarce as the Pacific conflict entered its final phase. The USS England's success also highlighted the importance of signals intelligence in modern naval warfare. Pacific Fleet radio units' ability to intercept and decode Imperial Japanese communications had provided the initial targeting information that made the entire operation possible. Without advanced knowledge of I-16's supply mission and the 7th Undersea Vessel Squadron's patrol positions, the United States ships would have been searching vast ocean areas with minimal probability of contact. Executive Officer Williamson's mathematical approach to assault planning represented another critical factor. His ability to calculate target depth, course, and speed based on sonar propagation data and observed evasion patterns transformed undersea vessel hunting from an art to a science. Post-conflict analysis would reveal that Williamson's methodology was adopted
throughout the Pacific Fleet, significantly improving overall anti-submarine effectiveness. The human cost of the England's success was sobering. Approximately 400 Imperial Japanese submariners died during the 12-day period, representing not just immediate casualties, but the loss of irreplaceable experience and training. Each undersea vessel sailors required months of specialized instruction and years of operational experience to achieve full combat effectiveness. United States losses during the same period were zero. Not a single man aboard the USS England, USS George, or USS Raby was killed or wounded during the undersea vessel hunt. This disparity in casualties reflected not just technological advantages, but superior training, tactics, and leadership at every level of command. The broader implications for Imperial Japanese undersea vessel operations were catastrophic. The Imperial Navy had begun World Conflict II with 63 fleet submarines, a force that had been reduced to fewer than 30 operational boats by May 1944. The loss of 7 additional submarines in 12 days represented an unacceptable attrition rate that could not be sustained with existing construction capabilities. Imperial Japanese shipyards were producing submarines at a rate of approximately 1 boat per month, while United States anti-submarine forces were achieving kill rates that far exceeded
replacement capacity. The mathematical equation was inexorable. Imperial Japanese undersea vessel forces would be eliminated through attrition long before United States naval strength could be significantly degraded. The technological gap was equally decisive. United States radar systems could detect surface submarines at ranges exceeding 15 miles under optimal conditions. Imperial Japanese submarines required surface running for battery charging and air replenishment, creating unavoidable vulnerability windows the United States forces could exploit with devastating effectiveness. Sonar improvements had eliminated many of the traditional advantages enjoyed by undersea vessel commanders. Early conflict AIC systems were limited to forward search patterns and lost contact during assault approaches. The USS England's QC sonar equipment maintained target tracking throughout engagement sequences,
providing continuous targeting data for weapon systems. The Hedgehog's contact fusing system represented the culmination of 3 years of anti-submarine weapon development. Traditional depth charges exploded at predetermined depths, creating massive underwater disturbances that masked subsequent sonar contacts. Hedgehog projectiles detonated only on direct contact with undersea vessel hulls, eliminating acoustic interference, allowing immediate follow-up attacks. Production statistics revealed the scale of United States' industrial commitment to anti-submarine warfare. The United States had manufactured over 600,000 depth charges by war's end, along with thousands of Hedgehog projectiles, K-gun launchers, and associated fire control equipment. This massive investment in specialized weaponry reflected strategic recognition that undersea vessel warfare would be decisive in the Pacific theater. Training programs had produced thousands of qualified sonar operators, depth charge crews, and anti-submarine specialists. United States naval schools were graduating new ASW personnel at rates that Imperial Japanese training facilities could not match, creating cumulative advantages that increased over time. Experience gained in Atlantic convoy operations was rapidly transferred to Pacific theater units, multiplying institutional knowledge and tactical expertise. The USS England's achievement represented the convergence of multiple technological and tactical factors: signals intelligence, advanced radar and sonar systems, superior weapons technology, mathematical fire control methods, and highly trained personnel operating with overwhelming industrial support, improving while their own resources diminished. By June 1944, Imperial Japanese undersea vessel operations in the Central Pacific had been reduced to desperate supply missions and token patrols. The offensive potential that had made undersea vessel warfare a critical factor in early Pacific battles had been largely eliminated through sustained attrition and technological obsolescence. The USS England would continue operations throughout the Pacific conflict, but would never again achieve the concentrated success of that 12-day period in May 1944. Her name had become synonymous with anti-submarine excellence, representing the transformation of underwater warfare from a contest of stealth and cunning to a technological battle where superior equipment and training determined outcomes. The legacy of those 12 days would influence naval construction and tactical doctrine for decades. Every major navy studied the England's methods and incorporated similar technologies into their anti-submarine arsenals. The age of the undersea vessel as an invisible predator was ending, replaced by an era where underwater vessels faced increasingly sophisticated detection and destruction capabilities. Admiral Toyoda's Operation Ego proceeded without undersea vessel reconnaissance, contributing to the decisive Imperial Japanese defeat at the Philippine Sea in June.
Battle of the Philippine Sea in June 1944. United States carrier forces, freed from undersea vessel threats by operations like the England's Hunt, could operate with unprecedented freedom of movement throughout the Central Pacific. The mathematical precision of Executive Officer Williamson's assault methodology would be remembered as a turning point in naval warfare where scientific calculation replaced intuition and experience as the primary determinant of combat success. The USS England had not just sunk 6 submarines. She had demonstrated that modern warfare belonged to the side with superior technology, training, and industrial capacity. In the depths of the Pacific Ocean, 7 Imperial Japanese submarines rested on the ocean floor, their crews honored by both sides for courage in the face of impossible odds. But their sacrifice marked the end of an era when individual skill and determination could overcome technological disadvantage. The future belonged to nations capable of producing weapons like the Hedgehog and training operators like those aboard the USS England.